The Redefined podcast is part of the Winmate Give podcast network.
Is it weird if I have a man crush? I don't think it's weird if I have a man crush, but I have a man crush on my guy, Brian Williams. I got to tell you, I had a chance, it was probably 5 years ago now, to meet Brian. And I see this guy who's like more athletic than everybody. He's more handsome than everybody. And I'm like, well, this guy's not going to want to talk to me. Like I literally had this imposter syndrome when I see my guy, Brian.
Oh.
And as I'm in it, I'm like, well, I want to talk to this guy. I got some courage to talk to my man crush. This son of a gun is more beautiful on the inside than the outside. And holy cow, I love this man. And I think you will too. So Brian Williams, the intro you never thought you wanted, but we got there.
That is the introduction right there, brother. I'm going to delete the one I have. This is recorded and I'll just transcribe this and that'll be my new intro.
I just want you to play that for Tasha, your wife. Every time you walk in, it's like, listen, somebody thinks I'm special.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Gang, I want to share with you how Brian and I came to be. We were in a group called Multipliers, entrepreneurs, guys who had the privilege of owning and running some businesses and had some added pressure in that. In that group, it was 30 to 40 guys, and some I really, really vibed with. And Brian was one of those guys. We sat by the pool in Tulum one year, and I just saw this man's heart, and I was enamored with how he cares for people and his family. Brian, how you speak of your wife is one of the most tremendous and refreshing things. Share to the world about Tasha, because I think the way in which you love your wife is something we all need to rip off and duplicate. Not your wife, but maybe our wives.
All that's true, man. Love Multipliers. Love that talk by the pool. I remember that. And I think, Tasha it's not really much that I'm doing. I'm just sharing who she is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the smartest decision I ever made in my life was asking her, actually her best friend introduced us on campus at Texas A&M many years ago, probably 30 years ago. And I knew something was up because only nerds hung out in the computer science lab, which is where I was. And so when you see anybody that looks like a real person in the lab, you knew, are they lost? Who are they looking for? And sure enough, her best friend was coming down to say, hey, I think you need to meet my friend. And so she is the biggest heart on the planet. She loves God and she loves people, and it is who she is, right? It's not what she does or what she's read. That is the DNA of who she is. And it shows up every day in every way. And it's funny. So this one lady, a friend of ours, mutual friend, we were at this conference and I ran into the lady like 2 or 3 times at this 4-day long conference.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I run into this lady, she says, hi, Brian, where's Tasha? Hi, Brian, where's Tasha? Hi. And I say, hey, look, you're gonna have to work on that. I'm gonna need you to give me an introduction, ask me how I'm doing, right? What am I up to? Because she literally asks for my wife every time. And that's become the story of my life. They tolerate me, they appreciate her.
I'm really just using you to get Tasha on my next season. How about that? In Multipliers, there were some single people, there were some divorced people, there were some engaged people, and there were certainly some married people. And you and Tasha were like the penultimate married couple. No, I mean that. I'm not trying to butter you up. You already like me. I don't need to like. We're already in a committed relationship, Brian. It feels good. Yeah, I saw the way in which you two talked about your faith and how you talked about your kids and how you were literal partners in life, which I think is so rare. My wife, Emily, was a public educator, worked at elementary schools, 1st and 3rd grade for 17 years. And now she's staying at home. And obviously that is a really hard profession. And I've looked to and said, well, what would Brian and Tasha do? Like they're such good partners. So help me to understand what I can rip off and duplicate from you on how you guys are partners. How do you talk to one another about business and making decisions and that sort? Because I think it's enviable.
So Tasha has we've had that question before and have since thought about it. And the way she describes it, I think is most accurate in that we know we've discovered our gifts and we give each other the freedom to perform in the area of our gifts. And we encourage and promote each other in that space. And it gets a lot easier if you're fighting for the same territory and competing. It gets kind of crazy, but if she plays on her side of the field very well as I do mine, and then we meet in the middle. And since we both like winning, we negotiate and discuss and compromise. And she's full of grace and mercy. The real answer is Tasha's full of grace and mercy. That's why we were able to make it all work. She's listening, she's patient, and she's kind, and she tolerates me. And so, but I think there's a lot of reality, and she is a hard worker. She is a hustler, right?
Yeah.
She really knows how to grind and make things happen. And obviously, as an entrepreneur, that's a very important skill to have, or trait should say to have. But I think also, man, really, it's just listen. I remember so we first got married. This is how it started, right? Let me tell you how it started. It started with us in the first apartment, and I remember we got home. We've been married like 3 months, and she said, "Yeah," she said, "This is not right." And I was like, "Yeah, I agree. I don't know why they would put this carpet in this apartment. Like this is the ugliest carpet." She's like, "No, I'm not talking about the apartment." So I'm looking around. Is it the car? Is it the like what it? She's like, "No, it's none of those things. I think it's you."
This
I'm
is not
like,
right. It's you that's not right.
exactly.
What was wrong with you then, Ryan?
We don't have enough time in the podcast to
Okay,
go down that
fair.
list, but she said, yeah, I don't think you're going to work. I don't think I'm going to work, and I don't think this is going to work. We're 3 months in, right? And
That's
I didn't
that's
know
the
what to
honeymoon
do.
phase. You're still supposed to be,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
yeah.
about. It was a rough day, man. And so listen, the only thing I knew to say in that moment, and I'll never forget this, is I said, look, I admit, like, I am not the best husband. I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Because my favorite scripture was the wife should submit to the husband. Every conversation. Well, you're supposed to submit. So that went over very well.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, she grew tired of that. So I said, listen, I don't know how to be the best husband yet. I'm working on it. But I said, here's what I can tell you. If you agree to never threaten divorce, I will commit to you the rest of my life. And I'll become that husband. I will figure it out because I'm a hustler and a hard worker. I'll figure it out. But all I need you to do is just trust and believe in that process. And that's been what 28 years ago, man. And I think that energy has probably kept us going because it gets hard and rough and complicated and difficult. And that death do you part piece, I think that's the one part we got right.
That's powerful. Uh, the death to yourself is, boy, I think people cling to themselves and their identity and really fully submitting to your spouse. That is a rarity. How have you guys been able to maintain that in a time in which most people don't?
I think we're kind of old school in that we bought into the values of marriage and the Bible. But another thing I gotta say, man, like as I said, I when I said that 28 years ago, I don't really know how to be the best husband. I don't know what I'm doing. I will tell you, I've signed up for more marriage courses, marriage seminars, books, five love languages. I mean, you name it, I've taken it, signed up for it. So much so, and marriage counselors. I mean, whether we're doing good or not, I'm signing
Mhm.
up. And I remember we were in this one counselor about this is about a year and a half ago, and I didn't even know this. And she said, it's too much. It's too much training, it's too many books, it's too many seminars, too many counselors. And I was like, and I love learning, I love that stuff, but it was wearing her out, man. And so I
Yeah.
haven't had anything in about a year and a half. So it's been a year and a half drought for me. No, and now I went and signed up for one on my own. Like I meet with them one on one. She just
Mhm.
doesn't sign up because she just felt, and I actually ran it across at the time a few of my guy friends that are married for years that are believers. It was like four of us at a dinner, and every last one of them said, "Yeah, bro, that's a lot, dude. That's a lot you're doing." Which I didn't think. I thought it was all good. So my point though is getting help. You know, I went through this phase of life where I came up with these three things that I needed to use as kind of like a mantra to help me move forward, and that was get dumb, get quiet, get help. Because I thought I knew a lot, and so I was always sharing the answer because I thought I knew the answer. So I said, okay, you need to get dumb and stop thinking you know everything. Now, once you figured out you don't know everything, step two is to get quiet. Stop talking so much. Stop leading
Mm.
so much. Stop charging ahead so much. And then once you've gotten quiet, when you do talk, I want you to ask for help. Get some help. And
Hmm.
so that is really what has encouraged and motivated all the training and the seminars and all that is the only way to really learn and grow and mature is to stop thinking you know it all, stop talking all the time, and then go ask for some help and be open to that feedback, to that correction. And that's what's informed me for the last, I don't know, that's probably happened about 11 years ago.
Uh, Brian, I like that perspective a lot. Get dumb, get quiet, get help. Uh, I wonder if somebody took even an ounce of the discipline and focus you have and applied that to their own life. I think a lot of people want their health to get better without ever changing their diet or their exercise. And I think that people want their relationship to get better without doing the counseling and the therapy and the books and the training and all that. And instead, if you show up as a student instead of somebody that has all the answers, ooh, you're moldable clay. That's a good place to be.
Yes.
Uh,
It took a while to get there, but yeah, I agree for sure.
Well, Brian, you found success in marriage, but you've also found success in business. As an entrepreneur, I know that it has not always been peaches and cream. There's times in which it's been pretty messy. You're at a great place right now. If people are new to who Brian, very, very handsome Williams is, how would you introduce and describe yourself professionally?
So I'm a computer science grad, so I'm a nerd at heart. Spent most of my career in Silicon Valley doing a lot of tech stuff, software and systems out there. And Silicon Valley is an interesting place. The smartest people on the planet, because everyone who's in that space wants to live and work there, and all the big companies are all there. Smartest people on the planet. I learned an enormous amount. Um, but it also it was the most I don't know how do you say the most empty place I've been because the priority there was so much priority on two things, well maybe three: technology, money, and success. Technology, money, like every conversation that those three seem to have come up in some kind of way: technology, money, and success. And that can interest me for a while, but it cannot sustain me. Like I grew up with nothing, but we were happy. So that taught me a valuable lesson. You don't need money to be happy. And so when technology, money and success kept coming up over and over and over again, it just started to wear me out. And it was everywhere in Silicon Valley. And so over time, it grew old. And I said, yeah, there's got to be more to life than this, right? So I was doing prison and street ministry while I was there, and that's what kind of kept me going. And I never volunteered to do prison ministry. A friend asked me to go speak. Can you come stand in for a speaker? We had a cancellation. Sure, man, I'll help you out, buddy. No problem. I knew the guy well. So I just took the gig and just went for it. And I asked him, hey, so where am I supposed to go? Like, where is it? He says, yeah, I'll send you the address in a couple of days.
I'll send you the address.
Exactly. He said, oh, and he calls back. Oh, by the way, I'm in a hurry. I gotta go. Don't wear any denim. And he hangs up. Why does the dress code matter? Normally they say wear this, but never do they
Well,
say don't.
and folks, if you can't see Brian, he's usually always in the Jay Leno outfit of a denim shirt and jeans. He is a denim prince, but continue.
And I said, why no? Actually, I'll call someone else and ask, and they're the ones told me, oh, well, where all the inmates wear all denim, and if something breaks out, we don't want any confusion. And so we don't need you to wear not anything, no denim, but nothing blue at all. And I was like, and I had no clue. So I ended up loving it, falling in love with doing prison ministry. And that was what kind of sustained me. We were at San Quentin. Of all prisons, San Quentin prison is where I
Oh,
ended up
dang.
to speak. I know. That was the very first time any kind of ministry like that. And obviously it was a little scary initially. No, it's not. That's not true. Every now and then your brain would turn on and you would go, there's 350 inmates here, and there's maybe 10 of us, and there are 3 guards.
Yep.
And then you would sit with that for about 10 seconds, and then you just, okay, God, protect us while we're here, and you go back. Because one time we went and they gave us an escape route. Yeah, we've been having a few things happen around here. So this visit, we want you to know if something does happen, you're going to go this way and go that way. Now, this one last story, we go into you got to go through all these checkpoints. And we get to this one checkpoint, and there's a sign. The state of California law has passed. They're no longer responsible for protecting visitors in a hostage situation. And he said, exactly.
So the sign says you're on your own.
Basically. But you have the choice. So you can never have 2 doors open in the prison at once. So they said, we can open this door, you can leave. We'll open this door and you can go in. So we're all in this little holding tank deciding what do we want to do, like in the moment. And many, half wanted to go left, the other half wanted to go right. And we just sat there and talked about it, said a really quick prayer. God protect us, and said, man, we came all this way. These guys need to hear the message we have to share, and we need to love on these guys. So let's go in here and make it happen. And that's what we did. But anyway, that was what kept me kind of in California probably longer than I would have been otherwise. But that was pretty much my experience there.
Yeah. And so professionally, what are you doing now, Brian?
So left corporate America 10 years ago. And while there, we took lots of training and professional development courses and consultants coming in, etc. And I noticed we were spending a lot of time, a lot of money. 2 months after they would leave, we weren't using hardly any of it. And we would throw the materials away, put it on the shelf. So I said, if I ever get a chance, I want to help corporate America in the leadership development and training space. And I want to do it where it actually works. And so I started reading books on that, the brain science, how the brain learns, psychology courses. So 10 years ago, started Perspectivity, we're a corporate leadership development and training company based in Dallas. And we've been very blessed to help companies like Nike, AT&T, Amazon, Microsoft, etc. It's in a variety of different ways. And it lights my fire, man. I'm very blessed to be able to do what I do. Doesn't feel like work most days.
Mm-hmm. So if you didn't pick up on that, the guy who is coaching the leaders at Nike and AT&T and Amazon and Microsoft is this man, Brian Williams. So we are in the presence of a guy who's done some really cool things, but I know, and you even alluded to it, is you came from nothing. You came from humble, meager beginnings. I'd love to understand that more.
So dad leaves when
Brian, we bonded over that. I think the first time we talked is like, oh man, I got daddy issues. You got daddy issues. Look at this. Different parts of the world, different upbringings, but here we are, brothers broken in our daddy issues.
I remember that talk. I think that I didn't realize this till later. So when I had come home from the hospital, from being born, he took a bunch of things and he left. He just took off. So growing up, I always thought I was the problem. I was the reason why we're going through so much financial hardship and pressure and stress because I ran him off. Like that was my process. So it's bad enough that he's gone, but to make it worse, I was the reason that he was gone. And so I blame myself for that, carrying all this head trash around as a result. So older brother, younger sister, mom's a waitress. So we basically grew up on tips and living in, we were in the government project housing for some time, and probably, I don't know, maybe my sophomore year in high school, got our first home, like wow, first bedroom, which was kind of cool. But growing up, man, you know, I don't regret it. I learned a lot living in that environment. I think it stressed my mom out to no end because there was so much chaos going on around. She was trying to protect us, and she just overparented and yelled a lot and was very strict because she was trying to protect us from all the stuff that was going on around us.
You
But she
know,
was
I just did a writing, and it's called Insecurity Flexes. When we're insecure about things, when we're nervous about things, we tend to grip tighter, we tend to flex more. And I'd imagine your mom scrambling to raise three of you and make ends meet was consistently insecure about her position. Does that feel accurate?
I never thought about that, but that's very much what was happening, right?
Yeah.
Very much. I mean, you can imagine a mom, right, in the midst of all of this stuff. Job is to protect and raise and income. And I mean, it was, I actually look back now. I just got off the phone with her like 10 minutes ago, but I look back now and just don't know how she pulled that off. Like unbelievable amount of strength and courage to do what she did, which is why I love her like I do today and spoil her as much as I can.
Yeah. Uh, I want to go back to you growing up. You blamed all the angst that your family was going through on yourself, when your dad abandoned your family. How long did that stick with you, and how did that change the fruit that came from who you are early on?
Shoot, man. I mean, I'll put it this way. All of high school and probably college, I never asked a girl out for a date because I feared I struggled with rejection so much because of my dad issues that I could not fathom me asking them out or something they say no. So Terrence, Ranji, Sydney, all my dudes, man, hey, go ask so and so. I would talk through them. And same thing with college. So to answer your question, that's how much of a grip the fear of rejection had on me, and I was dealing with. If because of my presence, it produced his absence, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about that. So if you have kids, man, that are going through something, anyone listening to this, I mean, as uncomfortable as it might be and as unnecessary as you might think it might be, I'd invite you to just sit them down and just have a conversation about what they might be going through and how they're processing information, because we are terrible at processing trauma on our own. Kids come up with the worst reasons possible for why things are the way they are, and I was that. But I began to believe that, and I bought into that for a good portion of my life. And it was through that get dumb, get quiet, get help process of my life that I actually did join a program with a bunch of leaders. It was a 1 year, like they called it leadership development, but it was really about dealing with like heart issues and fears and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's when that thing began to break open for me.
Wow. Uh, in season one of this Redefined podcast, I did just one episode on my own where it was just me talking, and I talked about the pain of rejection and how complicated that is, how it manifests itself into the entire way in which we perceive ourselves and other people. All my decisions have been like the catalyst for them has been for fear of and wanting to avoid that feeling of rejection. And Brian, I'm a guy that requires other people's approval for me to feel like I'm of worth. Some people don't give a rat's patootie about what somebody else says or thinks about them. I'm wired where I need everybody's approval. Where do you sit on that?
You
And
know,
has that changed over the years?
I that's interesting. I yes is the answer to the question. Is I do seek the approval, but what I learned early on was Miss McClendon, my eighth grade teacher, caught me in the hallway. Brian, I want you to do this. I have this Dr. King, I have a dream speech. I don't want to do no, I have a dream. Don't talk like that. You're intelligent. Don't talk like these other boys. She spoke perfect English, beautiful woman, and I wanted nothing to do with some speech. But I went after school. She said, I'll help you. I'll work with you to teach you how to be a speaker, communicator. So I went after school, learned this speech, working with her, went to the event, this assembly in the evening. I did the speech, and for the first time in my life, this auditorium stood up and started applauding. And I went, what is this? I want more of that drug, whatever that's called. I want it. So that was the day I fell in love with professional speaking, which I still do today, and just the approval. Because if you don't feel like you're worth much, when you have like, I don't know, 150 people stand up and say you're awesome, it helps to fill that void. And so I began leaning into grades and speaking and sports, anything that would any place where a lot of people were applauding my performance was very healing for me. The challenge with that is I became a performance-based person where everything was about performance. And so I would later have to get some therapy and deal with that. But originally it was very therapeutic and it was healing for me to be made to feel real and valued and seen.
Yeah, it's a surface level catalyst, but it is not a sustaining bite.
True. That's good. Very good way of
Yeah,
saying
how
it.
smart did I sound right there, Brian? That felt good. Oh my gosh. Uh, I have a friend who is one of the more lonely people that I know, and his career prior to the pandemic was he was a motivational speaker, and this guy's speaking to groups of 5, 10,000 people, some of the biggest stages you can have in the game. And you're up there and you're getting a standing ovation and everybody tells you how unbelievable you are, and then you go to the hotel room and you sit alone,
True.
and the accolades, the attaboys, they don't last. It's a short-term thing.
Mhm.
And some of my loneliest times have been when I play for the applause of others, and then you look to say, well, I just need the applause of the people that really matter, and it's like, well, where's my dad?
Mm,
Right?
mm. Very
It's
true.
it's an interesting, complicated thing to wonder if we're ever enough. But it seems like you found your stride, Brian. It seems like maybe it was Tasha landing in your life. Maybe it was you being really good at computer science or public speaking. But you obviously had some sort of a swagger to land in Silicon Valley, to land an amazing woman like Tasha. How did all this come to be? And then when did the world smack you in your face and remind you, oh, you're not as good as you thought you were?
um, I think one thing that I have bought into is I think I can do almost anything. So I'm going to try, I'm going to learn, I'm going to develop and grow. Like I love learning and growing. And so I think that kind of played a part into being able to do some of the things that I've been able to do. And, obviously, I will say God gives us gifts and abilities. And I think the most fulfilled human is one who understands what those God-given gifts are. They embrace them and they live them out loud and proud, right? I think that's when we start finding our groove. And I think for me, it was communication. I mean, I wrote a book on it. I speak publicly. I train other people how to do sales presentations, sales conversations, right? So once I was able to find that niche, like my purpose at the core, and begin to walk in it pretty much on a daily basis and practice it, get better at it, I think that's the sweet spot that we're all looking for. And as you know, other people usually see that in us before we do.
Yeah.
So I never really quite saw it. I do remember though, what that day with Miss McClendon in eighth grade, that day was pivotal for me. I said, man, I never thought I could do it. I never had a desire to do it, but she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. That's why I love teachers so much to this day, man. Your wife, these teachers, I think those are incredible human beings because I think they fill in the gap that parents can't sometimes. And for me, that's what happened, right? I mean, to be because what the interesting thing is with all that we've shared so far, when I first went to school, I was in these, they call them LLD classes, which stood for low learning disabled. They
Oh,
told me
okay.
I was mentally, I
So
mean,
so you weren't a standout growing up.
no, no, not. This is in kindergarten. First went to school, kindergarten to first grade. I ended up in these like, you know how they have they had the main building, and then there's these mobile homes converted
Yeah.
into classrooms, and
Yeah.
that's where we went. That's where the
Mine were
special.
called portables in North Dakota. What was it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Was it
exactly what
same
we
same in
called it.
Texas?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's where I ended up, man. And it had LLD on the door, lower learning disabled, low learning, whatever. And the kids said LLD stood for little lost dummies. So LLD, little lost dummies. So that's what we were called every day, man. Come in from recess. And to make it worse, you line up and they all went into the main building, and we had our own line, and we turned the other way and went into the portables, and they were just, bye, little lost dummies.
Oof.
And dude, it was gut wrenching and
Yeah.
painful to go through that and not be able to, because you already have self-doubt. You already don't think you're worth much. You already have all these issues, and then you pile that on top of it. But again, man, I don't know. I can't explain, like, Brian, how did you turn I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what happened. It's God's grace and mercy in my
Yeah.
life is the way I see it, because a lady named Miss White walked in that classroom and went, you know what? I don't think he's supposed to be in here.
Hmm.
Because I didn't talk at school. They called my mom and said, hey, is everything okay? He doesn't talk at school. So they thought, oh yeah, you're supposed to be in here. And I don't know why I didn't speak and why I speak professionally today, but at the time I didn't. And she said, he's not supposed to be in here, pulled me out. And by the time I got to the second grade, they said, he's scoring at a fourth grade level in all the categories. We advise you to skip him through the third grade because he might get bored and that might be an issue. But my mom decided not to do that because my brother was in the third grade, and I would have passed him up and
Oh,
went to the
snap.
fourth. And so she said,
So
no, I don't want to do
you went from LLD and nonverbal basically to 2 years later scoring so high that they want to advance you 2 grades.
it. Exactly.
Okay, so you're built different, obviously, but there's little narrative. There's a Casting Crowns song, and gang, if you don't listen to cheesy Christian music, you won't get the reference. But there's a Casting Crowns song called "Slow Fade," and it's that people never crumble in a day, right? Marriages don't crumble in a day. Your world doesn't fall apart in a day. Traditionally, it's a slow fade of a series of decrescendoing bad decisions. And what I'm hearing you say, Brian, is that there wasn't a slow fade into bad things. There was a slow gain, a slow progress that happened day in and day out, and a little bit more belief in yourself and other people speaking truth to you, and you understanding more of who you are and what your talents are. That was a slow crescendo to who you are now.
You
Did I
know,
hit the nail on the head? Did I sound smart
yes.
again?
I think that's spot on the money. But you know what, man? I don't know. Listen, I don't know. Here's what I believe. And I didn't think about this till right now. I think that the only I think there's many people who I think God puts genius in all of us, right? It's just a matter of, do you understand what that genius is, and do you know how to apply it? And I think I was just blessed to have some people call some things out in me that I couldn't see, and one thing led to the next. But I think there's some people who just don't have a Miss White walk in the room, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why it works that way, but or there's another opportunity and they may not see it or take it, because there was nothing that I did to get out of the classroom. I would tell myself every day, now this I do remember, I'm not supposed to be in here. I'm not supposed to be in here. I'm not supposed to. That was my every single day. I knew I wasn't supposed to be in there, because I could look around and see, like, yeah, you know what? I may not say the ABCs, but I know 'em. And so it wasn't that I couldn't articulate it, I just chose not to. But I could understand why they would say, hey, something's wrong with this dude. But I think it was really a matter of just other people intervening in my life. And I'm just grateful that they were able to do so.
So was part of your calling when you did prison ministry in San Quentin, was part of your calling to be Miss White for some of those gentlemen?
Oh man, no question. Without a doubt. You know what was interesting, man? I go to the prison, and so we're going back and for like a few times, so where they know you when you come in. What up, B? What up, boy? Like that kind of deal. And
Yep.
so we're talking, and man, I'm telling you, dude, in almost every case, right? You have a conversation and you find out, and they would tell their story eventually. And in almost every case, we were out hanging out with some friends, we were drinking, we were smoking, somebody said something, did something, somebody pushed somebody. It always was kind of like that slow fade you talk about. They didn't say, hey, let's get together and let's go destroy something.
Mhm.
In most cases, and there were some times I was like, you would look at a guy like, how did he get in here? Like, what'd you do before this? I was selling insurance, and one day this guy, girlfriend, da da da. You heard these stories over and over again. And so as a result of that, I began to learn like everyone in here isn't just mass murderers, right? There are people who just made bad decisions and
Yep.
choices and had bad, no mentors, etc. So we became those mentors and that voice of wisdom. But honestly, man, okay, I don't know how many people from the church might be watching this. So this is not a dig against, I love the church, but this is just my story. I'm the one being interviewed. So for me, I end up enjoying being at that prison yard way more than I did being in that church building, man. I mean, the love of it was so raw and so real and so genuine, and like they were desperate for God's word, right? Like they wanted to hear truth. They wanted to receive love and validation and appreciation. And at the time in my life, at the particular church I was going to, there's a lot of other stuff happening. And so I remember being late to a church meeting because I was at the prison because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave, right? I found so much truth and God's word I felt was increased in a place of depravity because they want so much truth. They're so hungry for light and truth. And at the other place, I was surrounded by other light and other truth, and its value wasn't as great. That's just the way my perspective was on it. But it was a great experience for me.
Mhm. I think it's sometimes easier to do God's work and to experience God in a place that isn't bound by traditional rules and rituals. And
Oh yeah.
I spent a decade in the ministry, and I've been out of professional ministry as a vocation for 12 years. But it's easier for me to do ministry now as a realtor and a
Yeah.
podcaster and a real
Yeah.
estate coach than it is for me to do ministry at the church. Although that has a great place and space, I personally and you personally sounds like we feel called to operating outside of the bounds of what is traditional.
Outside of the bounds of the building. And
Yeah.
listen, for those listening, listen, everyone's wired differently, right? We need people in the building and we need people in prisons and on the streets and in cafes, right? We're all doing the same work, just in a different location.
Yeah. Uh, Brian, I want to fast forward through a lot of stuff because you're coming out of a tough season and a tough time. You've been out of it now for a couple of years, but you built your wrist, you climbed some more, you found some great success, lots of failures in the way. And then the pandemic hits. And then you gave me one key word that just sticks with me that I think so many people are going to reverberate with, and that is the word of burnout. What happened to you in leading up, what happened to you during, and what have you done afterwards? Because if there's one thing most people who are aspirational can relate to, is that feeling of burnout.
So the lead up was essentially trusting in my own strength and energy and trying to make stuff happen, which is how many entrepreneurs are. And that can serve you well for
If
a
you put the
season.
world on your shoulders, Brian,
I don't
did you
know if
believe the hype that you were really, really important?
I don't know if I were worded putting the world on my shoulders. Maybe once I say this, that may be what it is. What I do think is I can make it happen, right? What can you make happen?
You're
Well, it doesn't matter.
you were him, right? So the kids are saying nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I never said that, but my actions would dictate that, I can make it happen. And so if you buy into that, good luck, number one, because I found from experience, it will wear you out and break you down because, Superman is a movie with a lot of scripts and actors and special effects and all that. Trying to pull that off in real life is not recommended. So for me, it was a combination of things, right? It was the painful reality of George Floyd because my recipe for escaping death while interacting with a police officer was talk slow, move slow, comply, right? So to see
There,
George
there
Floyd hand,
I don't mean to cut you off. What was interesting is I was talking with a female friend of mine, and she was alluding to all of the things that she has to be aware of that I'm not aware of, right? If she's in a parking garage, how she holds her keys and the lights and how close she is to the door. And is she able to get, like, all these things? I just pull into a damn spot and I get out of my car. I don't have to think about these things. Brian, I am a rich white man. My anxieties and stresses of the world are far different than what somebody who's a person of color or a different gender or all these other things are dealing with. I think that most of the world, if they're not a black man, they don't understand what it is that you've had to go through. So this George Floyd stuff happens, and you're told your whole life, like, you have to act and carry yourself differently around police officers. Like, help me understand when you understood that you had to do that differently, and does it piss you off that you have to do things differently?
so it's a survival skill. That's what it is, right? So when you see certain things happen to friends and uncles, and I know them, and or I'm with them and I witness them, and then in high school I had something that happened. You learn very quickly. Okay, you need to do whatever you have to do. The objective, even with my friends today, our objective when stopped by the police is to just survive the encounter. Like, don't get killed. Brian, it's just a speeding ticket. I get all of that. The objective is to not get killed. So in that scenario, I watched that video once. I could not watch it a second time. I
Mm-hmm.
actually didn't even finish the first time I saw it. But to see him handcuffed, face down, and begging for his mom and pleading, saying I can't breathe and literally dying, and the message sent to me is, wow, there's nothing you can do. Even so, your game plan that you've bought into and told your boys. I got 3 boys, 4 kids, 3 young men now, and that's what I've taught them. Hey man, talk slow, move slow, dome light on, hands on the steering wheel. They know the whole drill. Well, that day I saw that game plan doesn't work anymore.
Mm.
I didn't realize how much stress I took on for myself and primarily my boys when I saw that unfold and all the things. And I was asked to speak on podcast, webinar, all these different venues were asking for a black male voice to speak. And as a professional speaker, I got those requests, and I didn't realize how much I was replaying that story and the stress that builds over time with that.
Mm.
At the same time, my last name became I'm sorry. I got all these phone calls from clients. Brian, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to pull out. We can't do. Brian, I'm sorry. I can't. So we were doing 100% of our work in person. We lost 100% of revenue in March, April of 2020. So you have this George Floyd thing that happens, and all the business gets shut down in March, April. George Floyd is May 25th, right? So all these things were happening at the same time. So I'm dealing with myself, my boys, and trying to rebuild the business. And I didn't realize how little I was sleeping. I wasn't eating right. I was in the office at crazy hours of the night. And this went on and on and on until one day at 3 o'clock in the morning, I feel like it's like someone was like pressing my chest in, and it just
Mm.
started getting tight. And so I go on my phone and look at, signs and symptoms of a heart attack, and it doesn't look like that at all. And I say, I'm a guy, and an entrepreneur. So what do I say? Oh, sleep it off, get some water, I'll be fine. So that's what I do. So later that afternoon, I kind of feel it again. And I call the doctor, and I'm about to get off the phone because he wasn't around. And she says, hey, can you hold on 1 second? And this the perfect person got on the phone. She sounded almost like my grandma. This older Black lady gets on the phone. I tell her the story. She said, "Baby, are you there by yourself, or you have someone to drive you? Drive me where? I'm gonna need you to go straight to the hospital." Said, I think I'm gonna be fine. Baby, God only gave us one heart, and I need you to take care of it today. And that got my attention. And based on what I'm hearing, chances are you might be okay. But I've had patients in the past who told me this story, and they were not okay. So sure enough, I hung up, drove to where she asked me, where did I live? I told her that there's one on this location. I need you to drive there right now. And that's what I did. I get in the parking lot and stop. And sure enough, just like a male species, I say, you know what? I feel pretty good. And I start backing up to go back home. And in that moment, it wasn't an audible voice, but something said, boy, get your butt in the hospital. And it was so like, it kind of got it was alerting, right? That kind of, thing. And so I went in, and I remember they were giving me all these numbers, and I was like, look, man, I run 3 days a week. I'm good. I think I'm going to be fine. So he brings these numbers and he says, listen, the numbers are supposed to be between like 7 and 11, whatever it was. You're at like a 12.2. You look okay, but I can't let you out of here with these kind of readings. So I'm gonna need you to get in this wheelchair and get in this gurney, and we're gonna take you in an ambulance to the hospital. I say, hey, listen, I appreciate the help. I
Oh,
park
dang.
right outside. I'll meet you guys there. That's what I told him. Until he showed me some more numbers and they weren't looking quite right. And I finally went, you know what? I get it, man. Bring me the wheelchair. And I gotta tell you, man, getting in that wheelchair, having another grown man push you around, and then you get on this gurney and you get in this ambulance, and they're driving. I don't know where I'm. It's dark. There's this little window in the back of the ambulance. I have no clue where I'm going. Nobody's with me because everyone was out of town. I was home alone. I went
Mhm.
through that whole thing by myself, and it was during COVID, so no one could come. There were no visitors.
Right.
So I had 16 hours of isolation, and that's when things begin to change for me. When you're forced to sit with yourself, you're forced to rest, right? You're
Mhm.
forced to, and that's when a lot of revelations start taking place.
Mhm. And I shared with you a quote before we pressed record that I stole from somebody on TikTok. So that's where I get all my news now. But it was, if your drug of choice is busyness, rest feels like stress. And for you, you were able to find rest. Brian, I don't know if I can empathize with the George Floyd situation. I can try to learn, but I don't know if I can empathize. I can empathize with losing the business, right? I think that if folks are listening and trying to say, well, can I connect? And is that story my story? I don't think it matters what the catalyst is, whether it's something outside of you or something self-induced,
Mhm.
right? We have a lot of self-induced chaos and pain in our worlds, but
Mhm.
there are times in which the world happens to us and it causes a visceral response inside of us. It's just our job to try to navigate through that. And sometimes all those cross sections meet at the same point. And that sounds like what it did for you in September of 2020.
For
And
sure.
so sitting in 16 hours of isolation, Brian, then what?
The cardiologist comes in, and all these tests are passing. I'm taking all these tests and CAT scans, all this stuff, pass. So I hear the nurse meet him in the hallway and say, hey, how's Mr. Williams doing? Because they want to know, like, why is this guy here? And I hear the cardiologist say, that guy has one of the healthiest hearts in the building. We're going to have to let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And I question him and I say, you're telling me I'm healthy, but I'm telling you, I still feel this stuff in my chest.
Yeah.
And a huge lesson learned is a lot of hospitals aren't really trained for like stress and anxiety and burnout, right? They do what they do. They test the blood and do all the tests. And
It's felt but not seen, right?
oh, absolutely. And that's what makes it so dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, I have a leave there, I have a conversation with a friend. I explain him the story, and he starts finishing my sentences for me. And I say, dude, like, what are you talking about? He said, I went through the same thing 2 years ago. And, and he was the one who kind of really helped me out of this. So what I ended up doing is getting a therapist. I started practicing. I wear this Whoop now. Actually, one of the multiplier guys told me about Whoop. It tracks all your sleep metrics
Yeah.
and health and your stress. And so I check this every single day. I practice yoga, meditation, breathing, and really just sleeping and resting and slowing
Yeah.
down and learning how to say no and putting this thing on vibrate and do not disturb. And like someone was looking at my phone and it has like, I don't know, so many unread texts and emails and all this stuff. And I have zero amount of stress because of that. Well, you're a
Oh.
business owner. Don't you need to track all? I genuinely do not care. I mean, the important things, they're going to bubble up. I'll hear about it. I'll get to it. I do monitor and track it, but I am not on top of that thing all day, every day.
Your ability to let water roll off your back is pretty impressive. Folks, I had the privilege of playing golf with Brian, and I could tell that he didn't care much because I whooped him on the golf course. And you look at this tall, athletic black man and this tall, chubby white guy, and you're like, well, black guy's going to win every time. And sure enough, he did not, because I have one thing on you, Brian, and it's my golf game. So hallelujah.
I play like crap that day. Beautiful day, though.
Yeah,
Beautiful day.
yeah. Must have just been that day. Brian, final question. You've gone through a lot. You've seen some high highs, some low lows, from growing up in a unique situation that gave you a powerful life perspective, to living in Silicon Valley, to building a really impressive business in which now you're doing some things that people can only marvel over. I think your perspective is pretty powerful. If someone's listening saying, I want to be successful like Brian, what does success actually mean?
Okay. It is gaining the trust and respect of your grandchildren, which means a lot of assumptions are made behind that, right? In my world, you're married and you have children because you got grandchildren. That means you have a relationship with your children. So there's trust and relationship with your children. There's love, mutual respect, and rapport, which is why they trust you with their children, which are your grandchildren. And so you have healthy relationships with your spouse, which is how you have kids. You have healthy relationship with your kids, and then you have healthy relationships with your grandkids, and you can influence and impact those grandchildren and your children. And all of that impact begins to influence so many other people downstream.
Hmm.
So for me, it's all about relationships. That's what matters at the end of the day. And that's what I respect about you, brother, is when we met and talked at that pool, it became very evident and clear to me that this dude is all about relationships, because you were asking a lot of questions, and I like asking questions, and we were almost trying to beat each other to see who can get the other one to tell their story the most.
Yeah.
And that's rare though, because most guys don't do that, especially in that environment, because I was a very egocentric, rich business guy environment. But here we are on the pool in this luxury resort, and we're just sharing our story, man, and getting in the dirt and getting muddy pretty quickly. And that's why even months and years after that encounter, we still talk. And I've been to your house, and you won't come to Texas, even though I've invited you, but we're going to have to work on that once the record button is turned off.
I love it. And I love you, Brian. Thank you for the gift you gave our audience. Gang, if you're listening to the Redefined podcast for the first time and you haven't smashed that subscribe button yet, now is your time. Maybe there's somebody that needs to hear this episode. Maybe there's somebody who listened and is on the brink of burnout, or they're dealing with some daddy issues, or they're on their way up. And maybe Brian can be a gift for them like he has been for me. So forward this to the person that needs it the most. And we will catch you next time on the Flippity Flip. God bless y'all.
Much love, brother.